to
first.
record?
I
I
wasn't
guess
sure.
recording.
There you go.
Okay, just
Yeah, so
checking.
we're saying if we're going to help make that two-way communications so that custodians can connect and reach and find out information and share. I guess if you had an expert on that, what would you ask them?
Well, I think first I'd start with the purpose of custodianship in governance models and compare that with what the candidates and custodians think their responsibilities are. We might find there's some slight differences that might be useful for candidates and custodians to have some discussions about, like essentially, for example, in for the custodians of the planets, they're looking at what to do with pools of resources, right? And that's interpreted in different ways, as we're seeing many different ways. And so if we were all, let's say, trained in the latest thinking, which we may choose to accept or reject, let's say, but what would that be in terms of good governance? What does governance mean? What is good governance? How does it apply in the planet situation? And how can we engage discussion around those things, I would think. Are you taking
What
notes?
is the what I'm taking lots of notes. You know me. What is the if you were to reach your potential voters right now, what can't you do right now that you would, or what is more difficult? What can't you do, or what should be easier for you to do?
You mean my voters or prospective voters?
Voters or prospective voters?
Yeah, I
If you're
think the
trying to
answer
talk
to
to
the
people who
question there.
voted for you and the people who might want to vote for you next time, what can't
Yeah,
you do, or what is too hard? What should be easier to do?
I think that is the point, is communicating with potential voters. That is the current, past, and present, future, all around question, right? Because a lot of people have ideas, and the people who know each other share those, but then there's other people in the world, if they knew about it, they would have ideas too. There seems to be a sense, I think, from people I talk, even in our own like larger ecosystem, about jumping in, where they say, oh yeah, I never started that game, or I never jumped in. And I said, sometimes I'll say, well, do you realize it's like 3 clicks? No, I didn't. I guess I should look at that. But I don't know. I'm not necessarily trying to convince everyone I meet to play a game, right? But it would be nice to talk to people who are interested and have that somehow narrowed down, so we can share ideas and new experiments and upcoming games, and get feedback, and build communities around new ideas, so people can collaborate and work together, and of course cross collaborate, which is the essence, I think, of what we all do. Without that, we wouldn't be able to do anything. So I mean, if the essence is building better worlds, and governance is a part of that, communications are part of that too.
What do you think that communication would look like for you if it was a 5-star perfect world? What would you be able to do? Would you sit at a dashboard? Would you
What year?
have your own channel? Would it be sitting fireside chat with Lisa? What is that
We have all
perfect
those things.
communication?
Yeah. We actually, it's more my futuristic vision and dream is more of an AR environment, where all the things I've learned to know and love and use to create are accessible to me through AR over spaces wherever I am. It might look a little silly in public, but we'll get used to it. But I
What
think
would you see in
outside
that
of
AR environment? Would it be, would you imagine like network groups or conferences or walls of video or
everything,
Discord streams? What do you think that would be
whatever you
cool?
want. I mean, that's the point, is like in your space, you can add whatever you want. You can add whatever streams of data and people that you want. I mean, I think we're getting closer to where we can, what's the term? I don't know. Segment used to be the term. I think with data and the blockchain, it's more like flag, but I don't mean flag in a negative way. I just mean like indicate, we can indicate our different areas of interest, collections of NFTs, memberships, KYC, whatever we want. And then I believe in the future, more people will be able to pull that data and use it through APIs or just various methods we haven't even maybe thought of, and integrate it into their games and their apps and things, so we can choose like who we want to hang out with, what communities we want to be in, and who we want to play what with. Sometimes people want to be anonymous and experience that in various scenarios. And sometimes people just want to be with the people they're working on a project with, or have shared interests, or want to explore another set of concepts, or, without maybe fully committing their whole reputation and online identity to that community. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons that people might want to play or interact with each other with different sets of individuals and different communities. And so I think that's coming maybe a little bit sooner than taking our graphics from our electronics and just laying it on space. But that's essentially the metaverse, is that imaginary layer over Earth where we all come together. And so for it to be truly integrated, it has to be more a part of life. Like, it's got to be in our glasses or our jewelry, and not in these big, heavy electronics that make you need to shake if you touch them too much sometimes, like that's got to go. But it's not
So,
too far yet, hopefully. Yeah.
so do you see, basically Lisa's space as one of the options in there,
I've
where
lots of
voters
them.
and potential voters could come to Lisa's space and play in that space and do things? Or do you
Well,
see a place where all the counselors and people could come together, or do you see both?
everything. As fast as I can imagine him, I'm setting up concepts and spaces, so I imagine everyone will do what they want along that vein. Um, just like we create spaces all over social media and various things. It'll, be that, just without the hardware displaying it. Um, I think, and just to comment on the voters issue, sometimes we say voters and mean like settlers or citizens or players. Voters are voting for people to distribute, in Alien World's case, Trillium, and that's it. That's all they're voting on, right? They're voting on proposals to distribute that. Um, theoretically, they could propose to add responsibility to that governance, and people could express their opinion on that, but that's not really what that was set up for. So, like in any new place, people get to decide, do they want to try to set up governance of different kinds of things as well? So I think at this point, I'm speaking more to people with various levels of technical ability and interest in learning and experimenting about um, innovative technology, the metaverse, NFTs, blockchain, games, things like that. So some of those will become voters.
How do you like to hear from your voters and potential voters? Would you like, I mean, does it come across, do you think, is it one-on-one? Is it groups? Is it boards? Is it, do they leave videos? Is it live? Is it?
Um, I guess it
Just what does
depends
that
on the
look like?
scale, right? Because I'm kind of okay hearing from them wherever they are, but at scale that does present some challenges because I theoretically can't be in every Discord, Telegram, Twitter place, space, spatial, inverse, there's a lot going on. So even if I want to, that presents some challenges. So I don't think we yet have the communications tool. I actually see hope for Twitter. I mean, Telegram is the best I've seen so far, really. And so groups in Telegram um give you some like areas where there's some shared interest for one reason or another. And so if you want to get the pulse on something, you can go there, whether it's coding or community or cute or justice or whatever it is. Like you can go see what they're talking about, so that's very useful. And I think Twitter's going to have a lot of potential as they add their communities and possibly increase the opportunities to tip more in line instead of just in a separate place. And some of the things that Telegram has afforded us, and with all, I think that the various membership types will be able to see some of that there. So you know um but there's a lot of opportunity for people to create that and there hasn't been, I know it sounds crazy, but there hasn't been a ton of innovation in communication. I know that sounds crazy because of these major social platforms, but at the let's say individual and group level, there's a lot that can be done, and blockchain offers um public data sets so that people can build and create what they imagine and envision and attract people there to communicate with them. So right now it takes a lot of places. And so, where would I like to hear from them? Probably wherever I am. But I mean, not all the time, maybe, but some of the time. But I'm trying to go where they are. So it's tricky. I don't know a great answer to that. Right now they can find me at Lisa's Coffee Shop and Telegram, or, in any of the planets at Planet Bellas or at Planet whatever.
So how are you keeping track with all this noise right now? With all the stuff going on with your Twitter spaces,
Mhm.
and how do you manage all that? That's a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah, I have,
different information all flying over so many streams.
you know, the goal,
How do you,
I keep having to go back to the goal for everything, but the goal is to learn how to make better communications and marketing systems on Earth so that we can get that feedback faster and we can take these new innovative technologies and apply them in experiments that help people discover how to literally make the world better for billions of people, right? And so how do you keep track? I think we have the most amazing tool possible in our brains. And I know it's a bit crazy, but when it's really important, we can keep track of a lot and patterns and communications and things in our brains and across social platforms. Um, it is, I think, important and useful anyway to have models in one's mind and life about how a person is going to do it, though once you start experimenting and learning and getting into various social platforms and into different games or creating content, like having your models and methods, like people that you follow on YouTube that you like how they do it, or people that you respect in the community and see how they've done it, right? Like going back to communities where you started out, you've seen people maybe do things a certain way for years that you think, oh, that's helpful, or they're saying things that are actually useful to people, and seeing what they do. And then um I'd have to say I do think a lot about what could we create to make it easier and better to do that. So for example, crownlandia.com has the calendar on it, and so I've been adding a lot of public you know, Twitter Spaces or YouTube shows that are on most of the time anyway. It's not perfect, but it has a lot of it. And one can go look at the history of some of those as well and find helpful things, because the stories from people really, are amazing. Like if you look back at the Uplifters YouTube channel, um, if you listen to the stories over the past 2 years of people like saying how Alien Worlds got them started or inspired, it's absolutely shocking. I'm not sure everyone understands how much that, those communities intersected all along. But that's been very helpful if you're trying to think, oh, how can we collab with someone, to go look and see what their goals and ideals and experiments have been and how they've shared it over time. And I think the communities respect, that transparency of telling the stories and, not saying everything's perfect all the time, because it is so early with these technologies, things aren't perfect all the time. But, coming together and talking about things helps make it so. So, I mean, Zoom has been instrumental, Telegram, Twitter, Discord. I'd say those are the big winners. Email's okay once in a while, but shout out to Google. In spite of being centralized, they have some great free open source tools too that for, sites and sharing files and documents and things. So, but yeah, I think we'll see a lot more people build. There will be more hackathons, gameathons, contentathons, thonathons. Thon it up, learn, experiment, share, repeat, once in a while grow. That's, I think, how we'll do it for the time being. But I look forward to new creations, not just games where different species are killing each other. Give us some stuff we can use, guys.
Cool. I got a lot of information. Anything else you think is important?
Yeah, I think data transparency is essential. We're not going to scale until we have it. A lot of people say, oh, it's all in the blockchain, Lisa. It's like should be a book. It's a book title. It comes up so much. But to get that data off the blockchain in a useful and presentable way, like let's say you want to make a game with like multiple play paths, like, okay, how am I going to get that? So Wax recently added a system to see a lot of it. EOS USA has some, but that I think is the future. I think that game creators and significant content creators or players, like if you get big brands, they're all going to build public data displays to show how they got the data and how they determine their paths, and then how others can use that to build on top of it. Leaderboards have really led the way in that, but I think we're going to see, what would you call it, like a significant evolution of that kind of reporting and displaying of blockchain data for the good of communities and organizations of all sizes. Public is key, and not missing stuff would be good. It's a lot of data, so it's hard to display it, without leaving things out. But what you leave out might be what someone's counting on. So these are going to be things that are really interesting for a lot of people to deal with. But it's a night, a lot of people are interested now from all kinds of companies and sizes of companies, and individuals, nonprofits. Like a lot of people care now, and they're looking at it and trying to figure out what to do. And they're happy to spend, in many cases, years developing systems that support an ecosystem that they'd want to be a part of. So I think we're going to see a lot of that coming up in the coming years, and that'll be good for everyone. Hopefully.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've heard that a lot. It's on the blockchain, but that's just the simplest part of it. The history of accessing that, first of all, and then reporting it. And then these other actions like we've seen success, well, then rewarding because of actions. Those are all, more complicated after steps. It's one thing saying, oh, the blockchain's forever, it's there. It's somewhat true. There still would have to be a node, holding that. I've been part of blockchains that they don't last forever. You can't access them anymore. So it's
Mhm.
not completely true that they last forever. Someone has to keep hosting at least one node for them. So, if yeah, but yeah, very good points.
That's a really good point, because with all the craziness in media, you think, well, what if one project or another has an issue? Like, well, does that mean those, people maintaining those nodes are going to abandon it or go down, or like, any number of questions. So when you're dealing with larger brands, I think they'll have many ways that they are willing to approach that. And, being able to have those discussions with the people who figured it out so far, the smaller community of, let's say, I don't know what you'd call it, like the R&D, I guess, are the public R&D people, right? People learning how to use these open source and public tools, and experimenting with it so that others can coming in the future as well. And a lot of those are in larger companies and organizations and such. So there's probably, more of that going on that those of us playing games realize all the time. I mean, sometimes myself, I hear about something in the token world and it's like, wait, what is that? That's not a game. Like, what's going on? So there's a lot of benefits in engaging people who have wisdom in community development, in marketing, in game development, and to think about these things and how we can apply them, because it creates more engaging experiences for people in the future. And that's where marketing can really tap in, and brands can really tap in to build, really rewarding in many ways and engaging experiences, not just like the fiat off ramp, although that is popular. But I think a lot of people want to enjoy their days and spend time with friends and, online colleagues, or whatever you want to call it, fellow settlers of planets, right? And what I've seen is people, when they start doing things like playing imaginary, let's say strategy kinds of games, or just hanging out in communities, they like to create things, whether it's t-shirts or lore or communities or characters or stories, like, or imagining how something on Earth might translate into that imaginary virtual environment. And it's so fun. I think people love doing that and will enjoy doing that. And that will create sort of these imaginary mini economies all over the world that actually do allow people to interface with what kinds of work they want to do, and what kinds of, rewards they can get for their work, and have more, equity and ownership in that than ever before. And we'll see these amazing like communities of these collabs emerge over time and such. And I think that could really truly, I mean, I've seen in the experiments I've done, I've seen that possibility, and I believe that that could really, really scale.
I like
Got
it.
all that, guys?
I got a lot. You know me, I have notes like you wouldn't believe.
All right, well,
I mean, everything you said triggers off like,
yeah, I know one word is like a whole discussion, a whole rabbit hole. But it's, thinking is maybe your most valuable resource in the metaverse. If you're dealing with a layer, an imagination, layer, thinking is like really fundamental. Without that, there's nothing. Technology helps though, but it doesn't always have to be so fancy.
What it triggered for me is all the information, like you said, 2 years of data of all those videos, and I enjoy them, and but I'm not processing or compiling them and sharing them to the world. And AI just comes up for me going, well, to create stories or things that touch people or move people or engage people, just an AI to compile those into you know more digestible stories or something. Just it's I'm always thinking of a story or a narrative, and man, we've got so many just just there, sitting there, that can, yeah, that'd be a fun game just to,
It is really.
just
Actually,
to,
there's a writing contest on Planet Ike for those who are interested.
yeah, I saw that.
You're welcome to use. I've been actually this morning I was playing with a AI content generator that I have a subscription to. I thought, oh gosh, I have that. I might as well play with it before I lose it, before it runs out, and see what I can do. And it was really funny. Like I'd put stuff in, but it's really funny what would come out. Like it wasn't enough to be like a solid primetime thing, but it gave me some ideas to kind of expand on the writing. So I definitely still had to do the creative writing, but it would like give me a concept or two, kind of like a word trigger, and so that was really fun. And I thought, well, that's that's neat. There is a big debate among artists, of course, of AI generated art or like hand generated art or computer generated art, and almost to the point that it seems like the content is the debate about the AI generated art. But which is, I mean, everything every day is like the mind wonders what's going on, but in some way. But it is fun to think about and how to use AI. Like it's time. It's time we get to now, right? With KROWN, with the AI in the middle of KROWN, you get to create graphics and things. And I mean, there's a lot out there now you can do, and we'll be able to search and modify things. I like bats, for example, and as time goes on, maybe I'll be able to find every bat on the blockchain and display it easily. So cross-chain bats, that's what we want. That's what society needs. But if they can do that, they can do anything, right? I mean, fill in bat for anything, right? So it's just, I sort of like the light community-like experiments that help to inspire others. What else you want to know, guys?
I have enough for now. I'm sure I'll need more later, but
All right. Well, I'll be traveling the planets, and I'll be doing more news reporting on what's going on the planet. So you'll see me more in that role than custodianship at the moment. But we seem to have quite a few custodians working very hard to create new projects and inspire building. And so that's very exciting, and looking forward to looking at all the new tools to review and report on that and watch those sites build forward. And it's pretty fun. I'd say, for what is it, third week, it's amazing really how much people can do. It's a lot faster than when companies want to launch things. Let me tell you that. I've seen more product created in 3 weeks than I've ever seen at a company created in 3 weeks. So I think there's something to this DAO thing.
so you're playing with those people that were building that I came on one day that you're, creating this VR world. How's that going?
There's a lot of different people creating things. Some of it is public and you can listen on Twitter Space or on various Zoom calls. And some of it is super private and people are competing with others. And sometimes in both of those cases, I know, and sometimes I don't. So, but yeah, we're each doing, I'm having some fun setting up the planet, what I call the planet websites. I mean, other people can set up planet websites too. They're not exclusive, but to share, what people are creating and the events and everything for, let's say, planetnary.com, planetvelis.com, planetike.com, things like that. And, considering and thinking about what those might be able to be in the future is a lot of fun. So, but really, I encourage everyone, if they want to, create their own space wherever that is, on whatever planet it is. Like there's no boss of it, right? So it's like,
Well,
do what you want.
we're talking about creating 2 spaces. One of them is Center for Governance that just talks about governance and good governance and has people talk about governance, and that's where you can go. We're just talking about doing it for one planet just to test it out. Come talk to your custodians. That's kind of where we're going. The other one we're talking about is the Center for Art. So I want to take this real groups, community groups I'm doing, and create studios that do digital art, video, and music.
Amazing. Great.
So
I can't
those are
wait
the
to share it.
so those are the
Send me
two
the
places
contact.
that we're talking about. That's actually why we're getting all this feedback. We're maybe talking about what does the Center for Governance look like. So we want to build it so people could access it multiple ways and go there. So
You know, I
that's what
noticed
I'm doing when I'm talking to you, as I'm putting things down to headings, and oh yeah, that would be in the
I see we're creating right here, are we?
yeah.
You know, I've noticed like the EOS community, Eden community, Fractally, there are people who care a lot about governance and they assume everyone knows what that means. And I would say most people do not know what they mean by governance.
Yeah,
And
I think the
right,
opposite. I think the
what
exact
you think
opposite. I think
nobody
people
knows.
don't know
Nobody,
what
yeah, maybe both are true. Well, that's what I mean is like
uh,
people don't know what they mean is what I mean to say, right? Like, what is good governance? What does a steward of resources mean? What does a leader of a community mean? And that there's a huge difference between a steward of resources and a leader of a community, for example. And those are not always distinguished. Like, for example, you might have a fabulous consensus process where people discuss and vote on things and come to an agreement about an allocation of resource. But then you might have a Zoom call where like people are fighting about how that should be led, right? So like, I think sometimes we confuse all of these. I mean, there's many, those are two examples, but there's many different attributes in communities that have leadership and they're not all about governing resources or setting rules or inspiring people or causing actions or build, right? And so it's and I could go on, right? Like what is governance? What is governance in
well,
blockchain, right?
that's one of the main purposes that we want to set this up, is to have those discussions, because when I through all my various careers I've had, I find that nobody really knows what they're doing. Like the thing was is I kept being put in all
In
these
all of them.
positions without being part of the club. Like all of a sudden, oh, you're a product manager. So I talked to all the other product managers and go, so what is this product management thing? And oh, we do this. Yeah, but what is it? And nobody could tell me. The people who knew, program managers, they pretty much knew. Here's a program management, because they go to all these courses and get it. And chief engineers, they pretty much know. But the first time I'm suddenly a salesman, I'm not in sales, and all of a sudden I'm in salesman. I'm surrounded by all these salesmen. So I asked them, so what's sales? Well, we sell things, and yeah, but what is it? How does that? What's the difference between sales and marketing? Oh, those marketing, they're a bunch of jerks. They don't do anything. And I find that nobody could tell me what sales is. So I started saying, what is sales? How does it work? How does it fit in? And then also I find myself in marketing, and I go in and say, so what's marketing? I found nobody could do it. And now when I teach marketing, the first thing I do is have my students take 10 minutes and go to the internet and said, find me definitions of marketing. And they all do. And then I say, all right, so what is it? And they're like, and you know who has the worst definition of marketing? The American Marketing Association. They're the absolute worst. And you have all these experts disagree with them completely. And you know what's worse than trying to find marketing? To find branding. So that's what I find is everybody's going about doing this stuff without understanding it. And I find that as I've consulted with tons of companies, when I talk and say, well, who are you? Why do you do? They don't know. Well, we do printing, we do cannabis, and they can't really tell you. So I think that's the big problem, is if you're going to put people on a common framework, you have to agree what that is. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this Center for Government. Is not only to help people find, but help people connect and do it. So, how do you connect with your custodians, and how do you have these discussions?
The problem is, I would say people expect other people to have the same interests and goals and values that they do. And that is definitely not the case, I would say, with the majority of people around playing our games. There are pockets of shared interests, but there is a huge diversity of why people are here. And so when we try to do something, right, it becomes obvious that other people want different things than that something,
And
right?
what it's
And so
what it's worse is that it's there's this intuitively obvious normal stuff that we do, and then there's the weird stuff that everybody else does. And so so
Right.
people think that just because they do it, it's normal. And when you ask
Yeah.
somebody, well, why is that normal? They go, look at like take religion. You know, my wife grew up Catholic, and when you talk to a lot of those people, it's, oh yeah, look at those strange religions that do all those stuff. You mean like eating the body and blood of Christ? That's normal? Well, yeah, that's, of course it's normal because we do it. But when somebody else does something, you know, how is that weirder? It's like,
See,
oh, because
you're
they
like a
do it, so
digital
it's weird.
archaeologist. You're going collecting the history and the stories. It's like a digital archaeologist digging inside of all of these communities and experiences and getting the stories. So
Well, it's just
that's a good thing
amazing.
to
It's
do.
amazing how much expert there are on all these stuff that actually have no understanding of any. The worst, of
I
course,
think,
is
you know what,
is
everyone's doing the best they can, especially at a time like this when it's so hard to thrive in the older traditional world. You know, so many people are like, well, what can I do? Right? How can I put food on my table? How can I spend my day doing good things for the world? You know, or whatever it is that they think is important. And um, I think it's an unprecedented time in history that
yeah.
that is happening and possible,
When I
and
moved,
whatever it is that works is what's gonna thrive.
well, when I moved to Spain, they made me go through a cultural class saying you're living here now, you know, you better understand the environment. And the guy that taught that class was really good. And every once in a while, he would say something like, well, as soon as you sit down at a restaurant here, they'll bring out the bread. And you never eat the bread till the food comes. And we have a very good reason for that. And the reason for that is because that's how we do it. A very good reason for that. And the reason is because that's how we do it. And I thought, that is a good reason. And it made me realize that, well, that is a good reason. I have no problem with that. The challenge I have is to think, well, you do that for a good reason, but over there, they're crazy. And that's my only point, is not that people aren't trying the best they are. It's that we have this perception that there's normal and then there's other people's crazy stuff.
Right, right.
But the way we think, the way we feel is normal, and then there's wrong and weird, and it's like, that's the big challenge. And that's the one thing when
A
people
new
travel is,
opportunity.
yeah, is, you know, after you spend time in other cultures, you realize that, oh yeah, they're not any weirder than we are. We all have these things that we do because that's how we do it.
That's the thing about being in more equitable communities. Everyone's responsible for themselves, and um, to collaborate requires a great deal of respect, treating each other with respect, right? And so I think we'll be more inclined to learn and act that way as we go forward, and you know, we'll
Yeah,
see how it goes.
one of the, just to bring that point home, there's a good book by Bill Bryson called Home, because we assume that when we come home that the houses and the way we live and all that is completely normal and logically defined, and we do it because, you know, it really makes sense and we really thought about it. And you go, no. You know why, they invented dining, dining rooms?
Why?
Because looms got so good that you could actually get fabric that people could actually buy, because it was so expensive to do that artwork. So that meant you could get a chair in your home and you could cover it with this fabric. And usually you didn't have enough money to do the back, by the way, so they just did the front. But the people saying, people would, you know, were worried about people wiping their hands, because people used to do that stuff. If you look like at the etiquette, it says things like, don't blow your nose on your host drapes.
Oh
I mean,
goodness.
that has to be put in at that time. So if you so they created a separate room so that they could watch and protect their good chairs that they covered in this fabric. It's not like somebody said, well, it makes sense. We get together, we have a separate, because people used to do everything in the same room. And I mean, all kinds of weird stuff in the same room. And that was just considered normal that. And we think the fact that, you know, you have a knife, fork, and spoon. Yeah, forks were a really new invention. And they kind of started using them in Italy, and somebody brought one to England, and people thought that they were too dangerous. Of course, they were two-prong things, and then somebody famous started using it like 60 years later, and people went, "Oh, the famous person's using it." So all of a sudden, forks became all the rage, but people didn't know what a fork was like. So they had 2 prongs, 3 prongs, 8 prongs. They finally settled on 4, but forks weren't this obvious. Oh yeah, obviously it's always been that way. We've always had forks. There've always been 4 prongs. It was like, no. And then they went through this whole thing of they used to have like as much as 8 pieces as they tried to figure out what you should have for dinner. And they kept trying out all these utensils. And the only one besides the knife, fork, and spoon that kind of came out was the fish knife. Everything else, you know, they had whole books on etiquette on how you use all these different utensils while they figured. My whole point is we just thought that, oh yeah, that's just naturally, it's always been that way. It's like, no, that went all over the place. Just as something simple as when you sit down, you do every day at dinner and you have, you know, your knife, your fork, or spoon. It's like, you know, and if you go to, you know, a Thai restaurant, they don't even have that. It's like, what? Okay, there's a spoon here and a fork. Where's the knife? Oh, we don't use them. Really? You're kidding? No, we don't use them. All right.
Didn't know that.
So yeah, so that's just the point is as we create this, I think the first step is to bring people onto common levels and have that discussion, I think is really important because we tend to just kind of assume things and run off on our own basis and we're normal and everybody else is weird.
Well, I'm definitely weird, so.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But
we
I'm
all
looking
have this
forward to it.
weirdness. And I
I look
can't,
forward to
but
seeing
we rarely look, most people, most of us do not look at ourselves and say, oh yeah, that is weird. Like just something, you know, I hate packing. It drives me nuts. I hate it. You know, and to somebody who traveled 1 to 5 times a month for over a decade, you'd think it would be now meaningless. I got a system where I could pack very quick, but I just always hated it. And what's weird is as soon as it's packed, I'm heading out the door, no problem. But for some reason, you
Well,
know,
good
this
news,
pack.
when you're traveling through the metaverse, you don't have to pack. Wormholes
Yeah,
just like
well, that's why I like it.
yeah.
I'm happy I don't have to pack. And I guess I don't really I love traveling, but I hate leaving home, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right, there you go.
And so I can do both. I can travel and not leave home.
Place
So
for you.
and I don't have to pack, so it's great.
All right, guys. Well, let me know when the centers are open and I'll be sure to share them.
Yeah, hopefully soon. We'll kind of need some help on the best way to just set that up. Is it a website? Is it a VR environment? You know, how do we put the different faces to this thing?
I'm a
We
big
don't
fan
know.
of Google Sites, you know, and Canva graphics. It just makes it kind of easy, but free.
Canva, yeah, I use Canva all the time.
Yeah.
What
But
was the other
Google
thing you
Sites,
said besides?
like let's say you set up a URL through Google Domains, you can just right there build a free website for Google Sites, or you can just go
Sites?
straight to Google Sites and set up a website, which doesn't require a URL either. But if you have one, it's easy to go through it and do it that way too. And yeah, but that's, you know, and just start adding the content and, you know, maybe save whatever the name is in your various social platforms and Telegram and Discord and Twitter and begin to communicate.
Yeah, I think by the way, I own centersofexcellence.org, and
There you go.
I think
So you can go to
I
your,
think I own that.
if it's in Google Domains, you can just go there and add, you know, build a website and go to the bottom, build a free website. And yeah, you can check out and see what I did on, like, you know, Planet Nary and Planet Cavion and things like that. If of any interest to you, you can follow my little silly sites. They're meant to be that people can copy. That's the point. It's like meant to be free and easy for people to copy. So I know some people are like, oh, make it
Where's
fancier and get art and stuff. I'm like, well, how about you do that? And we'll link it.
where's your site? What are
Just
your,
Planet,
give us some,
whatever the name is. I think 4 of them are up so far. The other 2 are coming. So planetvelis.com, planetike.com, planetneri.com, planetcavion.com are up. And then Magor and Neuron are coming. And there might be a few others. We'll
I
see.
think we're starting with planning on Ike. Was that it, Dwayne? I know we're,
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dwayne lives on Ike, so I'm thinking.
yeah, so we're gonna start there.
Pick a land, pick one of the lands on Ike to tell the story on. And yeah, I like to do graphics for the events, right? Like let's say we're having a writing competition. So I just did a graphic for that and then shared
Well,
that.
our big thing is to, as soon as we establish it, one of the first things to do is set up the planetary governance event.
Yeah.
And then the idea is to work backwards and start setting up little events and skills and training, things you'll need for the event. And so
well, it's
we'll
a good,
put it ahead.
coming on the end of the year, so it's a good time to get all that ready for, starting a full year ahead.
Well, that's the idea, is we're going to launch that sometime in the future. So the key hopefully is, January 1st, we announce this event. And then we start backing up by doing a calendar that's not fixed of all these events we need, starting with workshops on government. Here's some people on government and some
Great.
Custodians and just talk. So we can do workshops, we can do interviews, we can do shows. We're looking at setting up a decentralized autonomous media studio. That's something that Dan Singjoy is doing. So we're putting one of those in there.
Great.
And then
there's some in the Uplift too. We built out a broadcast studio. There's actually a couple of them, but we did one in Robotron. And
yeah, and our goal isn't to build all these things and manage ourselves. Our job is just to have that center of gravity where we can link and put that stuff together.
Right.
So it's not
That's
like, oh, we're going to build this in control. We're just going to try and make that place, oh, here's where you go. Here's where that stuff is, and links to wherever it is. So it's not trying to control everything and build everything. It's just trying to help facilitate this stuff coming together. Having people with a common understanding and common communications, and then whatever people build, we're trying to make a place to put it. Or if somebody has, we'll make a place, or we'll let somebody else do a place if they want to go, oh, I want to have this. Oh yeah, that can go here.
Cool. I can't wait. I'll be there.
So I guess we just need to pick where it is in Ike next, and then create a
Dwayne might
Google
have
site.
some ideas about that.
Well, and maybe one idea I'll put past the candidates and see. It's funny, I always have to see if that meets the terms, but I just wonder if it's appropriate to use funds to have a commons. You know what I mean? Instead of it's Dwayne's land, or it's Kindermonger's lands, or it's Lisa's, or this, and then it's just a center point that's not taken away from other lands and mining, that it can promote everybody else on the planet, but is kind of that center of excellence there that you come in and do something. So yeah, maybe that's what I'll propose. See what the consensus is from the other candidates and see if that's appropriate.
You may not remember, but there are spaces and C that nobody owns, but they are enumerated. So one could theoretically start creating lore for those spaces. Yep.
I guess sometimes someone could claim those though, right? Because the land spaces are just unclaimed that someone might hold. I do have.
They're not NFTs, as best I know. Are they? I don't.
Are you talking about the water?
No, there's 2. If you look, okay, so if you go to the technical blueprint, and that is what created all the planets, right? At the very, very bottom, there's a link to the spreadsheet that lists all the NFTs. And on the one that says land, it has like a summary, and if you scroll down, it has the details of how many types of land there is per planet. So like, I think Ike has 92 grasslands or 95 grasslands. I'm not exactly sure, right? So those are land NFTs that were issued. But at the very top, it has the number of spaces, and at the very bottom, it has the number of C. So theoretically, maybe those would be officially issued someday, but conceptually and lore-wise, they don't have any yet, as best I know. So theoretically, someone could say this is a common space, you know, common space number 1 is for the Center for Governance or whatever, right? Or maybe you want art to be number 1 and governance to be number 2. I don't but I don't think that's a custodian thing. That's a whoever does it thing, or everyone who does it thing, right? Because someone might want to have a dance party on number 1 space, and it's like, okay, go ahead. Like, you know what I mean? So it's you know, there might be some issues down the road of how to communicate about all of that, but for now anyway, it's yeah, fun to think about.
Yeah, I've created a whole document from day one about the water spaces. So that's a,
Well, get
that's
on
a
it.
different one. Yeah. Yeah. Coming.
Get on it. I'll
Well,
be linking.
fantastic. I've
Yeah.
got to run to my next.
Yeah, we've got
Next
some
meeting.
big events in the metaverse today.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, Dwayne, we can go over the notes basically that I took sometime too.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Well,
Do
great
we have
talking to you
another
guys.
appointment? Do you have another appointment that you know of today?
Not today, and I'll send you some links for Monday by the looks of it.
All right, keep up the good governance. Thanks, guys. See you on Ike.
Awesome. Thanks.